Good evening, good evening, good evening, community. Good evening, community. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Let me get myself right. Hopefully everybody okay today. Yes. This is the African Speaks, another experience, an episode of the African Speaks where we're focused on the rise of the African, our Pan-African social media movement where we are bringing Black people together under one roof. Yes, I know this is offbeat. This is offbeat because I can tell y'all I've been under some attacks. When you get close to some major breakthroughs, you know them attacks are coming. And so I've been under it. And this has been on my spirit. This particular stream has been on my spirit. So I said, you know what? We're going to push through because I almost pushed it back to tomorrow. And I said, you know what? We're going to work on next week, tonight. And so that way, if anything comes up, we're ready next week. So we're gonna work on that. So I'm gonna be busy. So we've been dealing with the power of the divine self series, and we are on our 14th chapter. Let me see if I can get this up here. We're on our 14th chapter, and on the 14th chapter, we're gonna talk about into the Sasa. 14th chapter, we're talking about into the Sasa, the power of the divine self, into the Sasa. And we're going to break that down in a few minutes. But before we break that down, we want to also remind you that if you've missed any of the previous sessions to get to this experience, into the Sasa, we went deep into it. Because again, when the spirit hit me last year to start working on the power of the divine self, doing more research, more studying for the knowledge of self, I had to go back to the beginning. And I said, man, if I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to be talking about this one for a while. Because you can't just do it in a quick conversation. It just won't happen. I mean, I can give you a synopsis of what the power of the divine self will lead you to. But it's better for me if I sit down and say, let's take the long way around. We have what? We have some time. I don't have my timepiece on, but we're dealing with time now, which is the Sasa. We're gonna break that down in a few minutes. However, I want to go over the titles of the previous ones, and please look them up on the African Speaks YouTube channel. Chapter 1, understanding the source, which is the creator. Chapter 2, the atomic particle. That's important because it shows you the power of the source in the smallest of things, the power of consciousness in the smallest of things. And then you have chapter 3, which is the experience of Maya, because the universe was made in perfect harmony. And so we show you a community that mimic the framework of the universe. Ain't that something? We jump straight to that in chapter 3, but then we backtracked and said, let's show you what you look like. Melanin, the gift of the gods. And we dealt with that in the scientific means, and that one went around like wildfire. So one love for those who have been sharing this information. And I say, if as y'all watch and y'all look, if there is something that you like to see and you're enjoying the information, please on Facebook, like, comment, and share. Give us a blessing. Let us keep moving because we are, I can tell you, we're changing lives. We're reaching people. And if you're watching us on YouTube, yes, that one went by real fast, but we're going to say yes. Hit subscribe if this is the first time y'all checking it out. If you bypass it, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. And they've been messing with the algorithm. They've been messing with the algorithm. They'll sit down and say to people who you say, hey, it don't pop up no more. Yeah, they trying to stop what's going around, but you can't. We're going to get into the Sasa. We're going to get into all of this where they're still trying to control all of the information that comes from what? Us. And so in that space, from there, we went to the river runs deep. And you're talking about how we are made, the information that is built in us. We were made this way, talks about everything about how the systems of the body mimic the systems of the universe. And the fact that we are in harmony with those systems. Hidden treasure talks about the fact that, and that's another play off of stolen legacy, how everything about who we are developed humanity. Everything. So there is no Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. That's out. And so we dealt with that. Then we dealt with the 10 levels of consciousness. Because when you start looking at who you are, and you should be able to get to the point where you're scaling yourself who you should be. And in the 10 layers of consciousness, you could actually range from 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. 1 is 100% of your conscious level based off of your reality. And if every time you're talking, you're saying, I'm a product of my environment, this is what I know, this is what I saw, that shows that you're a primitive being. You don't reach human status until you hit like number 3 and 4. Ain't that something? And that's low levels of our being. So y'all go through that, take a look at it, and try to gauge where you are. And that will tell you how much more work that you have to put in. And then we went to the Sankofa journey, going back to get what we need so that we know how to move forward. Going back to get what we need so we know how to move forward. And from that experience is where I sat down and said, okay, since we're talking about moving forward, let's get into it. Let us get into the Sasa. And you're like, huh? Yeah. So in African spirituality and African culture, they clock time in 2 ways. It's not the past, the present, and the future. It's only the past and the present. Now, European society puts the future in the conversation because in certain books in African, where's my book at? I don't have it next to me. In certain books, they say that there is no word for the future in African linguistics. There is no word for the future. Why? Because their spiritual awareness was so profound, they understood that they had to surrender to the source now. If you act like there is a tomorrow and you put it off, it'd be a chance that you're missing the moments or the most expensive currency God gives, which is time. So how do you handle that? And then also in terms of understanding the Sasa, which is the now, and then the Zumani, which is the past. And when they explain the Zumani, the person with the most Zumani exists as the individual with the most wisdom. So the longer your Zumani, the more reverence you're giving in terms of the knowledge in which you hold. Ain't that something? Now, if they cut off your life and only start you at slavery, your Zumani holds no wisdom. So there's no reason to look at who you are. Why would you study your history if that's where you're starting? And if you don't go back far enough to understand that you were the manifestation of humanity in all wisdom, if you don't go deeper into your Zumani, you never understand your Sasa. You never understand your now. And then they got you dreaming about a future. We never dreamed about the future because we gave the Creator and our ancestors everything that we had at the moment. We lived in the now, not this only live once slave mentality. That's a slave mentality, right? So you got to live now, right? I think that's what it is. Where you just got to do what you got to do. You got to go out, you got to travel, you got to party, you got to enjoy yourself. Without understanding the knowledge of self, that means, yeah, you never mastered your Zumani. So you can't really experience. And again, we said the longer your Zumani, the more ancient your wisdom. And the more ancient your wisdom, you have the ability for self-mastery. Now, this is what was happening when we go into the hidden treasure. When we're dealing with the hidden treasure, then we're showing you the fact that they came over to and watched a people who created a society, created empires in the continent, multiple empires in the continent based off of self-mastery. And so when they began to study self-mastery, they said it clearly to themselves and they made it happen. We want you. We want everything that you have. We want all that you got. And so now, again, when we're talking about the Zumani, we're talking about tens of thousands of years in which we lived. In which we lived. And they didn't have that many years on them. Yeah, they didn't. And they don't. 250, 300,000 years. And they ain't like got like 30,000. Take a look at it. And so when they wanted us, they wanted the land. Please look it up. That one is the Motherland Connection. They wanted the land, its resources, and its people. And so over centuries, they carved it up. They went in and again, look at the Berlin Conference. Look at the Berlin Conference when all the non-African nations got together to carve up the motherland and said, this is how we're going to attack it. Don't think that there was one country that came in the continent to fight. We was battling non-Afrocentric individuals, non-melanated people from all fronts. When they come together as a group to say we need to conquer this land, take it over, and control not only the people, but its resources. Now, to keep us from fighting back, how's that? Keep us from fighting back. Yeah, they had to lock up more than just the land. And this thing is called the brutality of ignorance. They had to separate us from our understanding of self. We're talking about the power of the divine self into the Sasa, into the now. And you're saying, well, that ain't me now. Oh, yes, it is. Because ignorance is not bliss. I don't need to know all that. This don't matter to me. I was in a conversation before. What is the purpose of understanding the culture and the ethnic background of the nation of Israel in biblical times? And then when I started bringing that out, why it's important. Oh, I don't need to know all that. Why? Because ignorance is bliss? No, ignorance is brutal. That means you won't understand you, your people, the creator, or humanity in which you live and your place in it. The brutality of ignorance is such that it will make you the walking dead. And so we understand why, because they wanted everything in which we are. They wanted everything in which we are. They wanted to completely understand how we could be so profound as a people that they said we need to, in order for, we're going to take the information, what we can understand, what we don't understand, we're going to destroy. And then we're going to start instituting the brutality of ignorance. Because we can't enslave them as a planet. Forget just America. Look at the, let's go back through this. The British, the French, the Germans, the Portuguese, the Italians, Belgium, Spanish, and independent countries. They carved our land up. Ain't that something? And said, look, we got to deliver the brutality of ignorance. And as we move into the Sasa, we got to understand that slavery wasn't based upon just physical slavery. They said they wanted to keep the body and destroy the mind. Keep the body and destroy the mind into the Sasa. And if we do this right, it doesn't matter how many years go by. When they walk into their present situation as we are now, if they ever break out of bondage, it's not going to matter, because the way we're going to condition the mindset, the brutality of ignorance, it don't matter whether or not they walk around free or not. They still belong to us. Now, a lot has transpired between this state and this state. However, we're still in this state. When you see yourself walking around, I'm not no slave. And I almost lost a friend. I don't even know if she still watches. When I had to tell her, no, You're a slave like everybody else. I won't accept that. Well, if you don't control your food source, your clothes source, and your housing source, the three basic necessities to make life livable. If you don't control those three things, you're still in a modern day slavery. And if you don't understand the knowledge of self, you are literally the walking dead. You are literally, into this day, you're still the walking dead. Now, over that period of Asasa, over the period of time, right? Within our Zamani, when you look at our Zamani and you look at what happened when the physical slavery was abolished, we were still fighting for what? To maintain the status quo of the particular nation. We were only the financial resources of anything. And so this is exactly who we are. But then along that Zumani, there were always individuals that would pop up. And he was one of them. For those who may not know Marcus Garvey, he was one of them. We are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because with those others, if they might have the body. If we free the body, it means nothing. But none but ourselves can free our minds. We have to do that ourselves. They're not going to give it to us. Mind is your only ruler, your only sovereignty. It's the only thing that you should be able to control, that no man has access to. No other people have access to. When we say man, we mankind. No other species of mankind. The Frenchmen should be allowed to be Frenchmen. The Portuguese should be allowed to be Portuguese. The Italians should be allowed to be Italians, their culture, everything. But the African, the black man, should be allowed to be a black man. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be a slave to the other man who uses his. So it's been a part of male patriotic white supremacist societies to control the mindset of the African genotype. Now, in that journey of Zamani, and when brothers were waking up because we no longer had the physical slavery, so we could travel where we want to, like now. We're traveling where we want to, but nobody's coming back saying we're not a nation. I don't know how many millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, that we're spending on traveling and vacations and going places and having a ball, that we're not coming back with the concept that we don't control anything wherever I go. I see the faces, but I don't see a land that is 100% controlled and free of contamination. That's coming next week. Decontamination. But I don't see it. And so we began to talk about it, build against it. Songs were developed in regards to it. Bob Marley, and it blew my mind that Bob Marley was singing the speeches of Garvey. You look at the words: emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Same sermon. He sang the song. And so in our Zumani coming up to our Sasa, there were breakthroughs. God said, I'm gonna try to break through, because this does not, our 400 years in captivity is nothing compared to the length of time we spent on earth. Not the African, at least. And the length of time we spent free. More than 400 years. However, the amount of evil mastery was serious. But in the time of Azumani, of them letting go in between the chains and the free walking slave who exists in a mental zombie state, there were organizations that began to pop up. Organizations that said, look, we have had the ability to be allowed to read books. And I don't know if y'all remember, and I should have put some black academia in here. Those moments where we would memorize information, and we had people who with great orators. W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass. We had great people talking. Organizations began to develop to say, you know what, we understand who we are and whose we are. And then there's an assignment once you get that, what you're supposed to do. And organizations that would even rewrite the spiritual process. Because you had the Nation of Islam in the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, but you also had other organizations. And I suggest in this particular group, in this book, this is my group, rewrites what it means to be a Christian when you're using an African mindset. So I suggest these two books. When you're using an African mindset, books came out, speakers came out, and things began to change around us. And on top of that, as we walk further closer to our Sasa coming out of our Zamani, we had individuals coming from the motherland. We ain't getting in our Sasa. Coming from the motherland who also made statements in regards to who we are. Madoma Somé. I suggest you get these two books. There are a ton of books that you could get that would help you realize that Black folks is moving into an understanding of self. Now, I can always tell you that, yeah, the Nation of Islam always has books that will help you see you. Where's my latest book? From the Nation. The Mathematics of the Mind. That's my latest. I'm reading that. And this particular brother was a brother who was born, and we talked about, no, in service, we talked about how a woman's body is so sacred through the process of birth that she could speak to the spirit within. And in that spirit within, if she's in tune with who she is, if she has complete knowledge of self and she's in tune with the source, with the community, with her culture, that spirit in her had made an agreement before she got here. Before she got here. Your mama knew you were coming before she got here. Now, whether or not she made a decision to have more kids or whatever kids, you had an agreement. Look, I'm going to come through you. And this is what I'm going to need you to do when I come through you. In this book, he talks about his experience and the fact that he knew, the shaman and his tribe knew that he was sent to bridge the gap of the African diaspora when it comes to their spiritual understanding of who they are and how to use their ritualistic practices to get back to the true identity of source. So I do recommend these books. Into the Sasa. Because as we traveled from physical slavery to modern day, where we are existing as zombies, we still had ways to go. We can dress the way we want, look the way we want, act the way we want, but that doesn't mean that we were whole. And again, we're going to define freedom is when we get to a place where we are governing ourselves. We have full control over our minds, our schooling system, our bodies, the foods and the type of foods we eat, and our spirits, how we seek our connection to the land, to each other, the land, our ancestors, and the Creator. And whatever deities you want to connect within your African spiritual self. That's on you. Now we take a zoom quick coming into our Sasa, where they knew, and we're talking about the racist, patriotic, white supremacist society. They couldn't hold back technology. As much as they wanted to, they can't. They couldn't. And so as we zoom close into the reality of the information age, they had hoped that we as a people still living in this state will not be able, when we have access to information, when we have access to information, won't utilize it for the purpose of understanding self. Mm. And so we have free access. This is the first time in our history after slavery that we have access to so much information and direct access with each other. And in that space, what do we do with it? That's something to think about. In that space, what do we do with it? How do we use it? What do we use it for? Is it for pure entertainment? Or is it because we are understanding that we're trying to use it for self-mastery? Now, for me, was the development of DaAfrican Speaks. I sat down and said I knew that there needed to be some type of information online that pulled my interest. Something. And I said, I'm not going online. I'm not going on social media. Why? Because it's like another big version of dummy tube. Give me something that lets me see me so I can get out of the zombie state in which I live in. And so the majority of us who are diving into this era of and it's a new technology where they sit down and they say, let's get this. I'm gonna pause here. It's a level of neuroses that they're giving where everybody's becoming so individualistic and self-indulgent, where your whole life is based off of likes, comments, and shares. And if you don't get them, you get a certain feeling about yourself. Individuals. Right. Now, if you sitting down and you just trying to entertain folk and you want 1 million, I don't need 1 million. I need those who are going to be committed to self-mastery and to be able to deliver information if it takes it soul to soul, person to person, door to bell to doorbell. I had a friend tell me, I watch you to write down the information to recreate the data to give to my people. One love. I appreciate you. And then giving me credit. Y'all listen to this brother. My number started shooting up. Why? Because this is not about entertainment, man. This is not nowhere close to be anything near entertainment. Because when we take a look at how we're using it and what we're using it for, it's not something that's helpful. It's definitely nothing that's helpful. When we look at the state of our youth, let me drop this here. Nope, not here. What are we showing each other? What are we doing? When we look at the state of our music or the women that represent mothers nowadays, what are we looking at? What are we looking at? Everybody is trying to just get over and get in. They're trying to improve their food, clothes, and shelter where they have to get it from something other than them. So you know what? We didn't create the game. So we're going to learn how to play your game. But to play your game, you have to lose who you are. We're talking about the Sasa. In today's world, you have to lose who you are. And even into now, and if you look, because they have websites where they're entertaining themselves, but however, you can find it all over the place. We are studying ourselves, but guess what? So are they. They have been studying us since they came in contact with us centuries ago. We were studying ourselves. That's how we knew about everything. We understood it. And you know, still in this country, the United States of America, the science of melanin is controlled and owned by the government. That's not free information that we're allowed to read and access. Why? Because they don't want us to know how to access the power of us. Not only that, when in World War II, I believe that was whichever one Hitler was down with. In that war, when they got the information in 1945, they got the information of what creates a docile people, and they looked at this chemical of fluoride and said fluoride calcifies the pineal gland. And if you look at the which one is it? The Secrets of the Mystic Temple, chapter 8, and we talk about the pineal gland. And we can probably redo this one over again because we did do it even more in the first series where we talked about melanin gifts of the gods. That information is still only controlled by the government. They are still studying us. This is why a black woman can't get her placenta. This is why they move black women to take their uterus rather than heal. They are studying us, taking pieces, bits and pieces, to figure out what will make them, because they're becoming they're becoming the species that's going extinct. But then what will be left? What will be left? But a race of a zombie state? Because we've refused to dive deeper into understanding self. And so with our Sasa, we see them again still not only studying us, but giving us back ancient wisdom as though it was theirs. What? Visualization, affirmations, the laws of attraction, vibrations, frequencies, everything that they're discussing, they're talking about it as though it was their information, but it's ancient African wisdom. Asians are not going to tell you that it's not African because they know that the first Asians were Africans. Buddha's African. Man. And not only are they claiming it, they are making millions from it in our Sasa. This is now. This is present day now. That they got websites and individuals who are trying to show people how to manifest their thoughts. What? That's ancient African wisdom. But they don't want to tell you that. They want to just say it's ancient wisdom. They don't tell you whose wisdom it is. Why? Because they don't want you to know that they know that they still stealing it. And they're making millions off of it. And non-African individuals are finding small ways to do such. And now what we're doing as a people, we're taking these same ways, trying to find a way to fit into their world. So it doesn't matter what you're using. If you're still utilizing our tools, not knowing that they're our tools, and even if you know they're our tools, but if you're using them only to have a better life inside their world, what are you? What are you? So when you emancipate yourself from mental slavery, what does that look like? That means just like everybody else, I can feed myself. I can farm my own food. I can have my own. This is why African continents now are slowly trying to break that chain, moving white folks out of certain countries. And in Ghana, told Switzerland, We're not giving you our raw resources no more. Wait. And Switzerland has been getting Ghana's stuff for a long time. A long time. We want your cocoa bean. No, we're taking your cocoa bean. Then we was nice. Oh, we're gonna buy the cocoa bean from a low price from you and create a $10 billion industry and give you pennies. He said, no, we're done. We're done. Ghana said, we're done with that. We're not giving you any of our raw resources anymore. We're going to create the chocolate ourselves. Look that up. Y'all can Google everything now. Why? Because they gave us access to too much information. That's why Trump tried to stop it. They wanted to regulate the internet because it's a breakthrough platform if used correctly. If used correctly. Now, we have individuals in the communities that are using it, but they're not using it correctly. And there are ways of that. And we got to be willing to, if I'm trying to wake us up from this state in today's world, using technology to wake us up from this state, if something ain't happening, change it, flip it, twist it. Now, what we're noticing, despite them still controlling this or claiming that it's their spiritual technology, building empires off of our ancestors' information. I don't know how y'all feel about that. That just rubbed me wrong. Building empires and trapping us within our own frames using our ancestors' information. You got to pay for Gaia. They know we're not going to pay for something that we not on. Every time I sit down and see a show coming, I'm like, I'm going to look at that. That's good. That might be some good data. But I can't pay them for it. They want me to pay for my ancestors' information. I'm paying for my grandfather's wisdom. We're going to get into the Shikashi record soon. How you access it on your own. Wait. And you start dealing with the Shikashi records. They think that they got a hold on that too. That was all of them, but it's not. But despite what they're doing, into the Sasa, we see a new African into the Sasa. We see the African that is definitely not afraid to show that they embrace their culture. Not afraid to show that they define what beauty is. Not afraid to show that they are intellectual, spiritual, vibrating beings when you walk into the Sasa. When you're dealing with the issue of the power of the divine you, the divine self, you can look and see that it's coming. Now, one of the arguments that we have is the fact that just because you embrace your culture and your heritage means nothing if you have no process of decontamination. That's next week. The process of decontaminating what's already in. You don't reject society for the sake of rejecting society, but you build to counteract what is placed in you so that when you walk, you don't walk, you glide, because you in that God state of mind, that level of God consciousness. God consciousness cannot be obtained. The divine self cannot be obtained from black people the same way it's being controlled by non-black people. We can't get there like that. We just can't. Some individuals have posted it, talking about the human will and don't want to connect it to the source. They connect it to themselves. That's individualism. And we're not an individualistic people. We're a communal people that shares wisdom and power, because if you have it, in this country, if you have it, you don't share it. Why? You use it for your own financial gain and get other people to pay you. That's another thing I have. The capitalization on African spirituality. Ooh, that's coming. Another chapter. I'm going to write these chapters down. When understanding the power of the divine self. But we coming. When it comes to the understanding of who we are and whose we are in the Sasa, a lot of people look at our children and say, what in the world in the mindset is happening? Easy. These are individuals who are walking zombies. These are individuals who are walking zombies. Not these individuals. Look up when Prince said, if you were a part of, we didn't make the game. And so when you find a way to get ahead using somebody else's instructions about life, you give God praise, but God ain't got nothing to do with that. Why? Because you're not living in the society that the Creator called you to live in. You were lucky, so you give praises, you give thanks. Yeah, you found a loophole just for you. But then what do? Do you go back and use those millions? We have more millionaires in this country, in this world now, more black African millionaires than anywhere. The only person I see running around trying to build an independent black community, well, I can't say he's the only one because in terms of celebrities, Akon. Every time you turn around, he's trying to build a new Africa. But his problem is he's doing it with white folks. Problem. Let me see us do it with us. Let us be able to look at every other species of man and say we have produced life the same way you have. Now let us go even further into the in our Sasa, surrendering to everything that who we are at this moment. And so as we continue to move forward into understanding the power of the divine self, we want to make sure that we take to heart how we spend our time. Because how they're spending their time is to keep us in a zombie state. And as much work as the systems in which we live in, the systems and the institutions in which govern our lives, not individuals, but the system, oppression is systematic. And only if you accept that system, you accept what happens. But again, we've had individuals to break it. And if you want to talk about the deconditioning processes, these are the books to read. You will see what deconditioning looks like, feels like, tastes like. Even if you have Ifa, Yoruba, if you haven't read these two books, your faith, your African faith may still just be immersed in individualism. You're just calling on African deities, but inside you is still contamination. So next week, definitely decontamination. We're going to get it. But as you look into your Sasa, look around you in this present day, and you start wanting to understand the power of divine self, look at those individuals who are not afraid no longer to embrace exactly who the Creator has called them to be. And when you do that, you will see the eyes. Let me see if I can get this one, because this wasn't a part of this. You will see the eyes of a sister, of a praying sister. I teach my kids what Godfidence is. That's that understanding and experiencing God, that when you're standing in your knowledge of self, that no one can shake who you are. That's that focus of wisdom in your eyes. It's that glow in your skin. It's that vibration of your being. It's that Godfidence. No one can separate you from you. God said, let us create mankind in our image and likeness, one male, one female. The two together will experience source. Male and female. The two together will experience source. Male and female. I say that in this new liberal world. I'm not against anybody's choice. But if you really want to experience source, there's a process to it. There's a process to standing in that confidence. There's a process to it. And this is where this is the Sasa. This is where we need to get to. When you're surrendering, that mother who just, when she got that kid who just didn't want to listen, that kid who didn't want to listen, she said, I got you. If you ain't listening to me, I'm going to send a prayer to make sure that you have your experiences to pull you back home. You didn't get here. I didn't get here by happenstance. Somebody prayed for me, had me on their mind. They took their time and prayed for me. And I am so glad they prayed, because it allowed a breakthrough for me to have the opportunity to reach my divine self. And so that's what we're here to do. Next week, we're going to talk about decontamination and using certain tools to get you there. And with that, I wish y'all a blessed evening. One love. I'm looking for my outro. Peace.